the next left onto Harlington Road West, A312. Continue on A312 for half a mile. In 300 yards, slide right onto Causeway, A312.
There is a vacuum and it's got to be filled immediately if we're going to protect people by October. I know from my own experience, you've got to act quickly to deal with the benefits and tax issues if you're going to get the changes in by the time you want them to be in.
Take the next right onto Causeway, A312.
Some of the other contenders for Prime Minister in a moment. First of all, let's go to the phone lines. 0345 6060 973. The cost of living crisis. How are you going to handle it? And what ideas do you think would alleviate it? Mark's in Camden. Hello, Mark.
Good morning. Well, I think they should have a windfall tax.
Continue on A312 for 1 mile.
They think that it will prevent foreign investment in the UK or scare people off if we have that. I don't think it will, because other countries have introduced it. It's been successful, and I think with London still being a hub for investment, it won't affect that. I think
Tell me how it works then. Break it down into practical terms. How do you introduce a windfall tax, and who would you introduce it for?
I would, because of the huge profits that have been made by the gas companies, electric companies, power companies, etc., and also the oil companies as well. And so, no, it would have to be introduced. They have to bear some of the burden. And I think at the end of the day, I think when we set up the privatisation of these, there should have been much better regulated, so that that in a crisis like this, that they wouldn't be bowing to the shareholders so much and actually taking responsibility for what was publicly owned. And so I think that it's really responsibility, and it was badly set up. And I think that it would be a great help. I think the other problem is, with us not having a government actually doing much at the moment, it seems like Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are more interested in sort of winning the head prefect job than they are actually in what the electorate wants and what the electorate needs. And I think politically it's suicidal, but it's short-term thinking, and this is one of the problems we've got now. We have too much short-term thinking, and I think nationalisation would be a good thing, because the companies haven't lived up to what they're expected to do, which is provide an essential service for the electorate.
All right, thank you, Mark. Asking how you would at least attempt to bring down the price of some of these bills that we're expecting. Talk about nationalisation. Not everyone's in favour of it. Raymond says the problem with nationalisation is the costs spiral out of control over years. Businesses need to be run lean and mean. That was the advertising, certainly, for when we were going through all those Thatcherite proposals.
In a quarter of a mile, at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit onto the Parkway, A312.
Could lay a large water pipe parallel with the rail line. How long is the Eddie Mayer and Ian Duncan Smith audio? 90 seconds. Okay, let's have a listen to this. So this is, there's been a lot of complaint that the Conservative Party and indeed the civil service don't really know what to do about the cost of living crisis. And how about this feisty exchange from Eddie Mair and Ian Duncan Smith?
People are talking about a social catastrophe. Martin Lewis, very much expert in this field, is calling on
Exit the roundabout onto the parkway.
to take action now.
Continue on the parkway for 1 mile.
And I think you've just conceded. We're not going to get any detail from Liz Truss until after she wins. I suggest to you it's really not good enough.
Well, I don't agree with you, Eddie, I'm afraid. First of all, yes, there is a significant problem facing key people, most in society, but very much those who have difficulty. I set up universal credit designed to make sure we understand
It's not going to help.
households.
It's not going to help.
But, Eddie, just let me finish.
No, I'm not going to let you say universal credit.
Let me
It's
finish,
not
Eddie,
enough.
because I need to explain to you what's going on. I'll tell you what.
I know what's going on. I hear it every day from my listeners.
No, let me tell you. What's enough is when the government makes sure that those who need it most get the money.
Well, they're not
The
getting
key
enough
problem-
money. What are you going to do to help
The key
them?
problem, the government's just put 15 billion, which
Not
is
enough.
still rolling out.
Not enough.
Look, here's the key. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know where
Yes.
that money is going. Government can't just go, wham, we're going to chuck money out. Who's it
Really?
going to? Which are the ones that can do it? And how do you legislate to get that done so that all of that happens? You can do that very quickly, but you need to make sure, as the government is right now doing, working out who are the at-risk families, where that money should go, how will you get it to them quickly?
Right.
As soon as that is worked out,
So
then
you
the
don't know-
Prime
you don't know the
Minister
answer
can
to
make
those
a
basic
very
questions.
quick decision.
You don't know the
you
answer.
don't know the answer to that basic question because you are not able to see every single family's needs.
Pretty feisty. I told you that's Ian Duncan Smith and Eddie Mair clashing over the weekend. There's also been a suggestion that renationalising, as we've mentioned before...
In a quarter of a mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the second exit onto the M4 slip road to Heathrow Airport, M25.
The idea that can help everyone hasn't been accepted by everyone. It's received widespread public support. Apparently over half of the British public want to see the energy companies nationalised, with just 8% opposed to the idea. Do you want to see some of our energy companies nationalised? How would that actually work? The lines are open now. 0345 6060 973 is the number to ring. If you want to text, it's 84850, or you can tweet at LBC. How are you facing the cost of living crisis? How much larger are your bills going to be? Are you going to have to make some very, very difficult decisions when it comes to the winter? 0345 6060 973. Give us a call now. You'll get through. It's exactly 6:30. Lottie Morley has the headlines.
Passengers are being warned to expect disruption on the trains today. Members of the ASLEF union are walking out for 24 hours in a dispute over conditions and pay. British
Exit the roundabout onto the slip road.
Later, after being stabbed on
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto
The
M4.
5-year-old was about to make a speech when a man with a knife jumped onto the stage. Record numbers of people are having bowel cancer checks after the death of the campaigner Dame Deborah James. Health bosses say the amount of people being referred for suspected lower gastrointestinal cancers is up nearly 80,000 compared to the same time in 2020. The weather, mist and fog in the north and east will clear to make way for a dry and sunny day across the UK with a high of 35 degrees.
LBC. Join me, Andrew Castle, here on LBC.
Continue on M4 for 3 miles.
Having been miserably wrong 1,000 times on forecasting inflation, and he says that we shouldn't be asking for these pay rises because the whole thing becomes self-perpetuating. Well, that's all right for you, Andrew, but we aren't going to turn down a pay rise.
Join me, Andrew Castle, this morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC. Ian Payne on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Angry old bloke says yes, nationalise the lot of them, and Gordon Brown as emergency Prime Minister until an immediate general election. Let's hear from some more politicians. Here is the current Prime Minister talking about what Gordon Brown has suggested and about whether or not the government's doing enough.
I'm proud that we've rectified some of the mistakes of the previous Labour administration. It was a bit much hearing from the current Labour leader, Gordon Brown, saying that whatever he said, who was in power when they failed to build those nuclear reactors? It was those guys.
Former leader, obviously, but slip of the tongue, I think. So let's hear from the people. Boris Johnson saying he can't really do anything at the moment until the new Prime Minister takes over. So what about the potential new Prime Minister taking over? It's either Liz Truss, likely, or Rishi Sunak, unlikely. Let's hear from Liz Truss, first of all, talking about the cost of living crisis and what she might do.
Well, what I'm promising is from day one, people will have lower taxes. They'll also have lower energy bills because I'm going to put a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy. But what we need is we need a growing economy. And a growing economy will mean more money in people's pockets. But what it will also mean is thriving businesses, higher wages, higher productivity. And the problem we've had for decades in this country is low growth, which has squeezed the funding available for public services.
So she's into tax cuts. That seems to be the best way that she sees of dealing with the cost of living, unlike her rival Rishi Sunak.
In half a mile, keep right to stay on M4.
Of government is to make sure that we support those who most need our help through that. And that's what I did as Chancellor for 2 years, and that's what I'm going to do as Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has been pictured in, I think it's Mallorca, but he's back now and says that he did a little...
Keep right to stay on M4.
Didn't he, with Jackie Smith and Ian Dale of this parish. So here's what Keir Starmer is suggesting about how the current Labour Party should deal with the cost of living crisis.
In January, we said there should be a windfall tax. It took the government 5 months to catch up with that idea and implement it. We also said that VAT should be taken off energy bills. Rishi Sunak is only just now recognising that Labour got it right again. Today, I've announced that for prepayment meters, this is the 4 million people who are hardest hit, who have got extra money, premiums on that, paying even more than everybody else. That will be abolished under Labour. It's outrageous and immoral. And on Monday, I'm going to be setting out a comprehensive set of proposals, a plan for how we handle the upcoming costs in the autumn.
So you can hear what the Labour Party, the current Labour Party, wants to do with more practical observations on Monday. The answer is simple, says Anton in Devon. Just regulate the profit margins of these companies. The more profit these companies make, the more you take it from them and give it back to the people, says Anton. Well, we've heard that Liz Truss, and let's face it, she's going to win, isn't she? Liz Truss is very, very opposed to the idea of taking any of the profits of these big companies. John says, Ian, during Thatcher's time, a national linked water grid was proposed, and he very nearly got there. Then Thatcher privatised water, investor dividends then took preference, says John in Chichester. To our old friend Andrew in Gloucester. Morning.
Morning, Wilfred. How you doing?
Good. What's your view?
Well, you know, this is what a national living crisis in a couple of months' time. This is now. This is happening now. As I spoke to you last week and said to you about the position that we found myself.
In half a mile, keep right to stay on M4.
As your listeners very kindly put me through to boot camps and few phone numbers, but nothing. You know, universal credit. They just don't seem to what's happening. It's not people in the labour exchanges, people at the...
Keep right to stay on M4.
There's no money. They said to me, what did I want to do? I said, we've got national shortage of wagon drivers. I said, so let me do that. I'll crack on and do that. I said, you're going to get the money back. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, put the attachment to the earnings. I said, no national insurance. I'll pull it back as soon as I'm ready. Get me through as quickly as you can. But I won't do it. So...
No, we did this, we talked about this last week, didn't we? And we found that, you know, there may be other ways of doing it. How are you facing the extra cost of living, though, for you personally?
I don't know yet. I have no idea, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. Because I spoke to a gentleman online about a CPC test that I need to be able to drive a little small rider to get myself back into employment. And I started 7:45 this morning until Wednesday, obviously not until the 35 hours in the classroom to gain my CPC. But this is it, the cost of the course.
Yes.
We could only muscle that £190 to cut the price of the course was £350. Total stranger who I was talking to, I was just chatting away to him. We just couldn't find the rest of the money. Do you know what he's done? What? He's put in his own pocket. He's going to make it up. He is going to allow me to sit on that course today so that I can start work hopefully again next Monday. Well, that's a complete stranger. Why did the government, why haven't they helped me? Why haven't they stood up to the plate like a complete stranger? You know, without the help of you guys last week,
Yeah.
they would have done what I could.
We sometimes serve a purpose, and I'm glad that we've managed to fix your problem, Andrew. Elliot is in Bath. Hello, Elliot.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, hi there. How are you doing?
We're doing all right. What are you going to tell me about the cost of living crisis? Is it affecting you or not?
What, for me personally?
Yeah.
So, I guess for me personally, I think I'm on pretty good way.
In 2 miles, at junction 6, take the A355 exit to Slough Central.
So far, my fuel costs alone have gone up by about £200 a month, just fueling the car because I have to drive a lot. But we are so far managing. Whether it'll be the same in January is a different question.
Okay. What's going to hit you hardest, do you reckon?
What's going to hit me hardest, I'm not too sure, but quite possibly the energy. We live in a listed building ourselves, and it's not the most well insulated. So, you know, if our heating costs are going up quite a lot, then that's probably going to have the biggest impact on us personally.
Okay, fair enough. And your advice to anyone who's particularly worried about their increasing bills, anything you'd suggest?
It's a bit of a tricky one, actually, what I would personally suggest. But I think people, especially in the general wider public, need to have a more broader understanding about why things are going up. One of your previous callers about half an hour ago was talking about the cost of food going up. I work in the food industry and the logistics industry myself. I know why the cost of food is going up. The cost of food is going up because getting it from supply to supermarket shelves, well, we have to pay drivers more now because we have a lorry driver shortage. We have to pay warehouse operatives more because there's a labour shortage. You can't use red diesel anymore. And I think...
In half a mile, at junction 6, take the A355 exit to Slough Central.
Obviously, I appreciate that's a lot.
What do you make of the current government's stance on this, saying they can't really do anything until the new Prime Minister is sworn in, as it were?
I mean, they're the ones, at least through my eyes, they're the ones...
Exit at junction 6.
This whole thing. So I think it's time, and this is very hard for me to say because I'll stick my hand up, I've been a Conservative voter.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the 3rd exit onto Tons Lane, A355.
Right now with the way the economy is turning out. A simple policy fact for you alone that increased the cost of food in people's shopping baskets. Commercial businesses are no longer allowed to use red diesel. But just where I work alone, we used to use 4,000 litres of red diesel per week. Now we have to, that's 4,000 litres of diesel we now have to pay duty on. Well, we don't pay that. That cost gets put back onto the consumer. So that lump of butter is now going to cost 5, 10, 20 pence more because the cost of transporting it and getting it to the shop floor has gone up significantly over the past 2 years, and the majority of it is because the policies of the current government.
All right, thank you very much, Elliot. That's Elliot at Bath, who works in logistics for a large supermarket, so one would assume he knows what he's...
Exit the roundabout onto Tons Lane.
...living crisis, and how are you going to survive rising bills? Ian, people have such short memories, says Steph. Nationalisation was a disaster. And Gordon...
In a quarter of a mile, turn left towards Sippenham Lane.
Nothing, says Steph. Jenny says, I don't think Liz Truss's idea of tax cuts is a good idea. How is that going to help pensioners and the disabled? This is outrageous. And Boris should go now if he's not prepared to help. After all, he's still on the payroll. He does seem like a sort of lame duck a little bit. And L, that's all I know you by, says, you may have been told you're not eligible for benefits. Don't believe it until you've checked. People that don't get help are the ones who don't have the information. Let's go to John. John's in Suffolk. Hello.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Turn left towards Sippenham Lane.
Impending crisis. Maybe it's here already.
Well, one needs to end the war in Ukraine.
Yes, that'll definitely help. How do we do that then?
3 years ago, gas was £40. It was at
Continue for 1.5 miles.
It's at more or less 10 times that price.
Good Lord. How are we going to end that war then? Can't see a way myself.
The way we got into starting it, the way we got into helping it get going. Do the opposite. So make sure, urge them all, get the West to urge them all to sit down and find a peace.
I think you'll find that they have been urging them to sit down and talk, that they just won't.
That's empty talk, isn't it? I mean, one knows what the intention is. The weapons are being sold, it's being fueled. They're talking about a war until the end. So there's no end to it, is there?
I don't see any end to it until somebody actually, either removes one of the major players or accedes to their demands, and the two demands are so diametrically opposed, there is no meeting point. It's two parallel lines, they never meet.
Then you have to pay the price of it.
What does that mean? What, we have to pay the price here?
Yes, of course.
Are you encouraged by the fact that they're opening up some of the Black Sea ports and some grain is being delivered to places that need it, like Lebanon?
Well, the grain's one thing, yes. But the supply of gas is another, isn't it?
Of course, absolutely. And oil. It's very...
Oil can slowly be substituted as other producers are brought into the market, but that's not so for gas.
Yeah.
And so our electricity, when the wind doesn't blow, like we're in a high pressure now, wind's not that forceful.
I think I kind of agree with you, John. I think what this whole last 2, 3, 4, 5 years has taught us is we have to learn to be more self-sufficient, don't we? We have to be able to not rely on other people. It'd be great if the world could work together in some homogenous way, but it's not going to happen. The pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the cost of living crisis, all these things, Brexit, they've all told us that we can't rely on other people. We have to become more self-sufficient. We have to be able to rely on our own companies to produce enough water that we can use it. I'm not particularly worried about that. The energy prices, we need to provide ourselves with clean, renewable energy as soon as possible. I don't know how I feel about nuclear energy, but it may be inevitable that that's the way you have to go. You literally can't have enough wind farms. What seems to me, and speaking to people who know far more about these subjects than I do, seems to be that the power of the sun has to be harnessed in such a way that it benefits all of us. I'm not quite sure how that will work, but I'm sure someone, as I say, more clever than me will think of that. So we have to be for that. And for God's sake, we need to do this as soon as we can, don't we? I mean, this is the year, I think, more than any year, when those who still weren't convinced that climate change and global warming was a thing that is going to harm us irrevocably, this is the year whereby, I mean, not only did we hit 40 degrees Celsius, we're in the middle of another one now. These are very unusual events. 1976 was very, very warm. I just about remember it. It was very, very warm, but the top temperature that year was 35. It was 30 days of temperatures in there.